The vast open plains of Nevada stretch out for miles, a wild and unforgiving landscape. For ranchers like Mark, this land is both his home and his livelihood. He's seen it all, from brutal winters to scorching summers. But one day, something happened that he would never forget. A moment that would test his spirit and reveal the surprising emotional depth of the wild creatures he shared his life with. It all started on a seemingly ordinary morning. Mark was out on his ATV, checking the fences that bordered his sprawling ranch. The sun was just peeking over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. As he rounded a familiar bend, he saw something unusual. A tiny figure standing alone, watching him. It was a wild foal, barely a few weeks old. Its coat was the color of dusty earth, and its legs were long and spindly, still wobbly and unsure. Wild horses are a common sight out here, but they're usually wary of humans, keeping a safe distance. This little one, however, was different. It didn't run. It just stood there, its dark eyes fixed on Mark. Curious, Mark slowed his ATV to a stop. He expected the foal to spook and bolt, rejoining its herd, but it didn't move. Instead, as Mark watched, the foal took a hesitant step towards him, then another. It was a strange and touching sight. Mark cut the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the sounds of the morning, the chirping of birds, the gentle rustle of the wind. The foal let out a soft, high-pitched whinny, a sound filled with a loneliness that tugged at Mark's heart. He spoke to it in a low, soothing voice, the way he would with his own horses. The foal seemed to listen, its ears twitching. Then it did something truly astonishing. It started to follow him. Mark started his ATV again and drove slowly, glancing back. The little foal trotted right behind, keeping pace as if tethered by an invisible string. Mark was baffled. He drove for nearly a mile, and the foal never strayed. It was determined to stay with him. He led it back towards his ranch, hoping its mother would appear. But the prairie remained empty. There was no sign of a herd anywhere. This wasn't normal behavior. A mother Mary would never abandon her foal. A sense of unease began to creep over Mark. He knew something was wrong. Why was this tiny, vulnerable creature all alone, and why had it chosen to follow him, a human? Back at the ranch, Mark got off his ATV. The foal immediately trotted up to him, nudging his hand with its soft nose. It was clearly seeking comfort and reassurance. Mark gently stroked its neck. The foal's trust was absolute, and it broke his heart. He provided it with some water and tried to get it to take a special milk replacer, but the foal was weak and barely interested. The little guy was exhausted, its body trembling slightly. The mystery deepened. Where was its mother? What had happened to its herd? Mark decided he couldn't just leave the foal. He had to find out what was going on. So he hopped back on his ATV, the determined little foal trotting faithfully behind him. He decided to retrace his steps, to follow the foal's trail back to where he first saw it. He hoped to find clues, anything that could explain this strange situation. As they journeyed back across the plains, Mark kept a close eye on the foal. It was leading him now, with a sense of purpose that defied its young age. It seemed to know exactly where it was going. The foal led him to a small, hidden ravine, a feature of the landscape Mark rarely visited. The terrain grew rougher, the air still and heavy. As they approached, a terrible smell hit him. It was the scent of death. Mark's heart sank. He dismounted his ATV and followed the foal on foot as it picked its way down the rocky slope. And then he saw it. Lying at the bottom of the ravine was the body of a mare. It was the foal's mother. The cause of death wasn't immediately obvious, but it was clear she had been gone for at least a day. Suddenly, it all made sense. The foal wasn't lost. It was orphaned. It hadn't been abandoned. Its mother had met a tragic end, and this brave little creature had stayed by her side until hunger and desperation drove it to seek help. And for some reason, it had chosen him. It had trusted a human to save it. Mark knelt down, his throat tight with emotion. The foal nudged him, then looked down at its mother, letting out another heart-wrenching whinny. It was a cry of grief, a sound of pure sorrow. In that moment, Mark's tough rancher exterior crumbled. Tears streamed down his face as he looked from the deceased mare to the orphan foal who had put all its faith in him. He understood the immense burden that had been placed on his shoulders. This little life was now his responsibility. He gently scooped the weak foal into his arms. It was surprisingly light. He carried it back to his ATV, its head resting against his chest. The ride back to the ranch was a quiet one, filled with a mix of sadness and determination. He named the foal Miracle because it was a miracle it had survived on its own and a miracle it had found him. Caring for Miracle was a round-the-clock job. Mark had to feed him every few hours with a bottle, just like a human baby. He stayed up through the night, making sure the little foal was warm and comfortable. It was exhausting work, but Mark never complained. A bond formed between them, strong and unbreakable. Miracle started to regain his strength. His wobbly legs grew steadier, and his playful spirit began to emerge. He would follow Mark everywhere around the ranch, his little hooves clattering on the ground. He became Mark's shadow, a constant, loving presence. The tough, weathered rancher had become a surrogate father to a wild horse, and it had changed him forever. Mark knew that one day he might have to decide whether to release Miracle back into the wild. But for now, they had each other. The little orphan who sought help from a human had found a home, and the man who found him had discovered a depth of love he never knew was possible.